I'm Mark Seifter.
And I'm Linda Zeiss Palmer.
And this is Arcane Mark.
Hello, everybody, and thank you very much, Author Still, for the flurry of gift subs.
It's very appropriate because we're about to talk about the monk, and monks are known for their flurries of things. So, today's episode is the monk. If you are curious because you looked in the YouTube archive or the Twitch archive and saw that you thought that the previous one was the monk, well, it wasn't. It was the fighter, but this time is really the monk. And we're not going to make more jokes about saying that the monk is the fighter from this point. But the monk is a really interesting class in the game. Because of the fact, and it was something that when we were talking about the monk, and like there was the Unchained monk that went through more iterations than any of the other Unchained classes, and even before 2nd edition and making the monk, during the Unchained process, like while talking about it, it actually went to a discussion that had like some of the really higher up at Paizo people. And Eric Mona said something that stuck with me, which is that like the monk class uniquely is a class that attempts to have all, in some senses, it mishmashes like the entire genre, slash like multiple genres that come from like certain Asian cinema and stories into a single class, and it would be equivalent the amount of things and different characters that people all want the monk to be, which he was talking about in Unchained in terms of like, well, you know, we put down one of the saving throws in Unchained, right? But they put up the attack bonus in Pathfinder 1st edition. But he was like, it would be equivalent to like if you had a game that had classes that were really nuanced for every sort of Asian fantasy, and then there was the Westerner, and the Westerner class was like a knight, but also a wizard like Merlin, and all, just like
was also trying to be like a rogue at the same time.
Yeah, it was Robin Hood, Merlin, King Arthur, but also like Friar Tuck or like a Western priest, and just like it had everything. It was just like, this is the Westerner. It does all of the things that the Westerner can do. So it's interesting because there's so many expectations on the monk class because of that. Like, because when you're doing the sort of story of, well, should the monk be really good at the save, you point out a martial arts movie where it was like, well, this protagonist had what obviously was such a good will save that it's like godlike. And another one where it's like, no, this protagonist's weakness was he had a terrible will save.
But her ability to dodge every attack was legendary.
But it's like, oh yeah, dodged like 5,000 arrows. It's like, yeah. Or it's like this one had such fortitude that they could survive like the worst things. It's like, no, but this one didn't. They had really awful fortitude, but again dodged a million arrows or whatever. So it's putting a whole genre into a class, and in some ways that really fire hoses you. But when it came to the 2nd edition version of the class, Logan took a stab at the first build, and then, of course, like all of them, we iterated on the class a bunch of times. So let's take a look at the art of Sajan, our iconic monk from Jalmare. So, Sajan the monk and all of the monks have the following description that is in the book to describe what the core rulebook says about a monk. So, the strength of your fist flows from your mind and spirit. You seek perfection, honing your body into a flawless instrument and your mind into an orderly bastion of wisdom. You're a fierce combatant renowned for martial arts skills and combat stances that grant you unique fighting moves. While the challenge of mastering many fighting styles drives you to great heights, you also enjoy meditating on philosophical questions and discovering new ways to obtain peace and enlightenment. So that's what we went with monk. It's very broad so that you can play the monk that you're going to play. So monks, in terms of role-playing notes, we said During combat encounters, you speed into the fray, dodging or leaping past obstacles with acrobatic maneuvers. You strike opponents in a rapid flurry of attacks using bare fists or wielding specialized weapons you mastered during monastic training. Stances let you change up your combat style for different situations, and key abilities allow you to perform mystic feats like healing yourself and soaring through the air. During social encounters, your perceptiveness lets you see through falsehoods, and your philosophical training provides insight into any situation. When exploring, you climb up walls, dodge traps, overcome obstacles, and leap over pits. You usually stay toward the outside of the group to protect more vulnerable members. You're well suited to looking for danger or moving stealthily. In downtime, you diligently exercise, eat healthy foods, meditate, and study various philosophies. You might also take up a craft that you strive to perfect. You might maintain a regimen of physical training and meditation. You might face adversity with a calm and measured approach, never panicking or succumbing to despair. You might look to the future for ways you can improve while remaining at peace with your present self. Others probably marvel at your feats of physical prowess. They probably think you're more than a bit uptight given your vows and tenets, and they probably come to you for philosophical advice. So that's sort of where we're at with the idea space of the monk. And let's see what some people here were saying about the monk.
Agreeing with you about needing to cover a lot of ground, and liking, and that Adam liked the fact that sort of the more mystical features are optional.
Ah, that makes sense. Oh, TotalCon is starting. Well, good luck with the special there, Eric. And let's see. Some people also saying that it's the best class. The monk, I assume, not the fighter.
You said.
Hey, it just said it. So the monk's starting proficiencies are pretty good. You get 10 hit points plus your constitution modifier, your key ability, strength or dexterity. You're trained in perception, but you're an expert in all 3 saving throws to start off with. You get some of the most flexible skills in the game. Not like the most. Like the rogue gets way more, but some of those are set. For the monk, it's just like whatever, 4 plus your intelligence modifier. Mm-hmm. There's no one skill that you have to take for the monk. For attacks, you're trained in simple weapons and unarmored attacks. For defenses, you're untrained in all armor, and you're expert in unarmored defense. So, I can't stress enough how much faster being expert in unarmored defense is than anybody else being expert in any kind of AC related thing. We already talked about the fighter starting expert in weapons, and that's nice, but most of the other martials get that at level 5. But the next time that anybody gets expert in defenses is the champion, who we already discussed is
very defensively
focused. They consider themselves to be amazing because they get that expertise at level 7. So and then that's the only one. Then everybody else is even later than that. Whereas the fighters level 1 only go to level 5. Now, the monk doesn't continue to be that high in advance. In fact, that fact that they start with expert kind of makes up for the fact that
they're not going to be wearing.
They can't have enough dexterity yet to fit out the max dexterity of not wearing anything.
Yes.
Right? Until level 10 for a dex-based monk. However, there are ways. This means that the monk is basically has more armor class than anybody else at low levels, except for someone who is in heavy armor and reducing their armor class.
And Alpha's also saying they also get the most versatile saves too at higher levels as well.
They sure do. Elftro is right. If we follow out their features, which let's follow out their features to go along with that. We'll see. They start with Flurry of Blows, which is an absolutely amazing flourish. Flourish is a type of action that usually gives you a major advantage, and so you can only do 1 flourish per turn. Often it can do more actions than the number of actions that it takes, and often as well, they flourish. It can be 1 action that does 2. If it's 2 actions that do 3, like maybe it doesn't have to be a flourish because you obviously can't do that twice, but
yeah.
Flurry of Blows gives 2 attacks. You also get to combine the damage before applying resistances or weaknesses, which is handy. And it's just a very nice very powerful starting ability. You also get powerful fists, so your fists are D6 agile and finesse weapons, which is like nearly as good as a short sword. Plus, maybe honestly, maybe better because what the short sword has is versatile piercing and versus slashing. So it's good on. You can change to piercing for like Rakshasas or when you're fighting underwater, but the ability to do lethal or non-lethal attacks with powerful fist.
Plus, you can't be you can't so
useful.
easily be disarmed when what you're fighting.
Nobody
with
can
is...
take it from you.
Yeah,
it's pretty handy. And that is before we get into some of the other options we have for increasing the monk's capacity by going into a stance. Some of the monk stances are like just like the thing you get from it is the best weapon or unarmed attack in like that you can have, but that's because it takes actions to go into it, and other people don't necessarily take actions to like have their sword out. So anyway, skill feats, they get all the same things as everybody else, but their movement speed is ridiculous. They get movement speed of plus 10 at level 3, and it increases by 5 feet for every 4 levels beyond 3rd. And that eventually goes to 30 feet of extra speed.
Mm-hmm.
That is a lot of speed. With Mystic Strikes at level 3, you probably don't need it, but it does make your attacks magical in case you don't have a hand wraps by level 3, or if you do have the hand wraps, you might lose it or something like that. You're always going to be able to get through things that require magical attacks. You get alertness at level 5, so you do get expert in perception. And level 5 is when you get expert in weapons or simple weapons and unarmed attacks, like we were saying before. Many of the martial classes get that then. And then, like Elfro said, level 7, Path to Perfection. You choose. Not only is it level 7, which is like around the time that the classes that have it locked in and are best at it, like a Rogue's Evasion for reflex saves, but you choose Fortitude, Reflex, or Will, and that becomes Master, and you get the evasion style.
So that way, whatever you want for the story of your monk, you can select that. And speaking of versatility in the monk, I wanted to touch a little bit on something that is not in the requirements for monk that is in first edition, which is the you no longer have to be lawful to be a monk.
That's true. You don't have to be lawful. There is a small advantage if you take Key Strike. You can do lawful damage if you're lawful. That's it. So, pretty much, there may be small things like that in other places, but you give me any alignment you want. Some of those monks definitely not lawful in the original media. A lot of the alignment restrictions are gone in classes. Mm-hmm. Another thing that should be pointed out, since we're now at the higher levels that monk has, is that the monk class, just like last week's monk class, the fighter, are the only two classes that are also flexible because they don't lock you in with like a particular sort of subclassy style option. You just kind of decide what kind of monk you want to make and build it a la carte. So you may have noticed we didn't do some kind of a subclassy thing at the beginning of the monk. So we've got weapon specialization like most other classes. We get metal strikes at level 9, and metal strikes is very easy to like miss how good metal strikes is. Counting is your unarmed attacks is cold iron and silver. Though I think it was pretty clear even in the playtest when Linda was in the playtest where Jason was running the You Die part of the playtest. They did skip some of the encounters. I think they wouldn't have done this if they actually had to go through all of them. But they fought the TPK machine final boss and won. Partially because they had a monk who all of his attacks counted as cold iron and silver.
Yes, that was very, very useful.
Yep. Plus, like, Owen was really good at triggering, and Linda, actually. Both had characters who were good at triggering some of the other weaknesses of the boss monster.
Folks are chatting about the monk's advantages in action economy, with the extra speed and also the flurry, and then also sort of the different strategies with it in terms of thinking about what to do with the actions on your turn, because after a flurry of blows, you're not necessarily just going to want to keep attacking and attacking.
That's right.
With a penalty.
it has a huge action economy because of flurry of blows and fast movement. This is pretty crucial. And once I get to the bottom of these, I'll tell a story about Mike Sayer's monk during the playtest. But I'm almost there. We're gonna get our monk expertise in monk class DC and key spell. If we have them spell DCs, key spells can be either occult or divine because there's multiple themings that some of these monks have. At 11th, we get second path to perfection, where we get a second master. That's handy. And then we're going to pick up on armored defense to master at level 13, which is very good. But it's around the same time as champions. We're going to pick up master strikes at the same time. So this is an amazing level where you get better at almost everything. Then we get greater weapon specialization at 15th, and the third path to perfection. Now we choose which one becomes legendary of the master ones, or if we don't care about legendary and we don't care about the whole you can no longer crit fail, that type of save, we can, let's see. No, we can't do that. We can't choose to take a third master. No, we do pick one that is going to be legendary. Never mind. It's probably better anyway. I really like having a category of saves where I can't crit fail because I know I'm going to roll a crit fail on something. If my monk NPCs had this against our wizard or for the crowd who kept disintegrating them, it would have been handy. It would have been very handy. Yes. Very handy. Then we get adamantine strikes at level 17. We're adamantine with all our attacks. We pick up at level 17. Also, legendary unarmored defense. Only champions also get legendary and that kind of thing. Plus proficiency of master for key spells and class DC. And then at level 19, perfected form, which is hilariously powerful. On your first strike of the turn, if you roll lower than 10, treat it as a 10 as a fortune effect. That is so good. Mm-hmm. You basically are gonna hit with your first strike unless you're fighting something really, really stronger than you and you didn't do any of the things that you know you did at level 19 to increase your accuracy a little bit. So yeah, it's really, really good. So let's talk a little bit about that action economy because it's very important.
Folks have been talking about it in here too with for example, a monk with a shield who took the shield block feat who uses some of that extra action economy to raise a shield, or using those actions to cast cantrips, for example.
Yeah, no, shield is probably too strong with monk. Whoops. I definitely have and will continue to play monks with shields because of the action economy and the fact that they just can without losing anything. Given that a lot of the fantasy of monks do not have shields, it maybe is too strong of an option, but it would have had to be an artificial restriction if they didn't have shields. It's no shields. The action economy is huge. In the playtest, which had a very similar action economy on the monk, Mike Sayer was playing a monk named Cobra. And that monk named Cobra was a strength monk. He just did not raise dex. We did not have this mountain stance, okay? So, I was just, terrified I was going to annihilate him. Because his AC was way lower, even with, monk proficiencies being very good. His AC was just way lower than the other frontliners, and was even, I think, one lower than
Well, Dex was one of his lowest stats.
Yeah,
wasn't it?
It was 12, and he put it in at 12, one of his top 4 at creation, and then he didn't raise it at 5th or 10th. Mm-hmm. So I was just sure that he was going to die, but he never did. He almost did when Luis died with his much higher AC fighter and then turned into an evil Shadow Hound, and I let Luis control the Hound, and it hounded him across the battlefield. The way he did it was that he would just flying kick in and then move around, and he was always so far away with his movement speed that monsters just didn't have enough actions for it to be worth it for them to chase him. And so, because they would just lose most of their turn just going after him, and he never stopped in a safe place, he never stopped in a dangerous place. He always stopped in a place that was safe for him, just not a place that was good for the monsters, and that was pretty huge. So and Stunt Monkey's saying that move, flurry, move is really strong, which is similar to what Mike was doing there, for sure. But I think shield is a stronger play to have, because then you can, if the enemy actually comes up to you, you can flurry, move, shield, and then they're even more discouraged from it because you also have more AC and you're super far away from them, and it might take them 2 actions to move up to you.
Oh, a monk with a Dragon Sorcerer dedication for the shield spell.
Yeah, so it's solid. Yep. I agree with Rico that you don't even need the shield block. That's not the main point. You don't even have to invest. You just take the monk's high AC, or especially on a Dex monk, grab a shield for the +2 with literally no investment, and you don't even need to buy an expensive shield. You probably just get the spell. Oh, no, Novel Enigma has it. You get the spell guard shield so that your saving throws are higher. Absolutely, that is what I did on my monk. It's fantastic, and you literally, like, at some point the spell guard shield basically costs nothing. You spent no feats or other options on it. Yeah, for sure. Rico wastes so many attacks on the party monk. Yeah, no, monks are outstanding, and Novel Enigma says monk is one of the strongest classes in the game. We didn't talk about how amazing Wholeness of Body is. Wholeness of Body is where it's at. It's a very good spell. Let's get the exact text of Wholeness of Body out so we can talk about this amazing focus spell. So where were we? Focus spells, monk, Wholeness of Body. Oh, cleric, you have so many focus spells all the time. All right, so
here we are.
Here it is. So yeah, it basically is. Imagine if Lay on Hands for the champion was incredibly selfish, but healed 8 instead of 6. Or you could also cure poisons and diseases affecting you. And since it's a focus spell, it's really, really, really good at counteracting them. So yeah, it heals so much. And Rex Liquid says monk saving throws with spell guard shield. Dang, yeah, no, it's a beast. When it's funny because on the stream you saw like the team with like Owen's was it like Sorcerer Champion and Moreland's monk and Linda's Barbarian and the others that were there winning Jason's Death Trap. When we were playing it, Logan was running all the parts, and I had a monk, and that monk was basically just not getting hurt. We eventually ran out of time before we were dead, and honestly, the only time I really took appreciable damage was when Jason's wizard got dominated, and he had been saving his quicken spell and all of his trump card spells. He'd been like, we're fine. He got dominated by a lich, and he's like, well, I'm dominated. He threw all his best stuff at us and nearly wiped out the entire party. And we survived that. We beat the lich. We recovered. But yeah, his wizard was absolutely terrifying. The monsters, no, it was fine. And that back then I didn't have a spell guard shield. Maybe that's when I learned spell guard shield. Way to go. So monk also just has a lot of really good feats. So at first level you can pick up, for example, I was talking about it before, some of these stance feats. And some of these stance feats are very, very strong. You can get some strength ones, like the mountain stance, that as long as you stay on the ground, you're gonna get a massive item bonus to AC that can handle you being a strength build, like Cobra. So now Cobra style characters don't have to worry about having really, really low AC if they have mountain stance. That was one that Mike and I were talking about after playing with Cobra. Although the official Cobra is actually in the book as the key monk on page 162. That's a picture of him. I guess he's not officially Cobra, but it was based off of Cobra.
Yeah.
Because he used all sorts of key abilities. You've got key strength, where you can take an accuracy an accuracy boost and extra damage on your flurry of blows that eventually gives even more extra damage. You've got key rush for when you weren't so sure that you could make the enemy not be able to catch up to at all, where you, as one action, strike twice for a focus point. That's the, yeah. I hope you have a ranged attack. Otherwise, I'm gone. Or just engage with the enemy archer that's super far away. But you've also got stances, like, for example, some of the other stances that are not strength-based include Wolf and Tiger stance, which are 1d8 agile finesse attacks. There are no other 1d8 agile finesse attacks. You have to use a stance action to get them, but they are stronger than pretty much anything else that is in that agile category. And agile's good for you as a monk because you've got your flurry of blows. There's stances that can give you fire attack. That one is a rare one that is known to the Pathfinder Society now, since they recruited the person who knew that. You can grab some of the monk monastic weapons and apply some of your bonuses to that. There's Stunning Fist, which is just really, really good, even though, yes, it doesn't like always do anything. Because on a successful save, nothing happens, and even on a failure, it's stunned one and it's incapacitation. However, it just happens every time you do a flurry of blows and any of the attacks hit. So it's just happening every time. It'll stack up those stuns. And guess what? If the enemy is stunned one and you move away,
good luck.
Yeah, right? Like, what are they even going to do? It really works well for the monk because you already had an action economy advantage, and you get even more of an action economy advantage if you manage to make them lose actions. Woo! So there's other cool things. There's stances that involve like shurikens. There's ways to deflect arrows.
To flying kick.
Flying kick, absolutely the flying kick.
Speaking of mobility and attacks.
Yep, where you, as two actions, you can leap, high jump, or long jump. I recommend the high jump or long jump because otherwise this is not as useful for you. And then make an attack. I mean, the leap is fine if you need to attack a mid-air enemy, which you can do with this. But the high jump or long jump specifically let you, if I recall correctly on those jumps, let me see. So yeah, the long jump action starts with a stride and then has a really long leap. So you go really far because you're moving with a stride. You can do a long jump and then do as long as you can leap, which is longer than a normal leap, and then attack. So it's like a mid-air sudden charge, as if you needed that on the monk, but you do if you want to just keep opening up your possibilities. Let's see. There's all sorts of things you can get with the monk that are really cool. We talked about wholeness of body already. There's stand still, where if you crit the enemy, it's like an AoE, but only for movement. And if you crit the enemy, guess what? They didn't move. That's fun if you have like a bow staff or something with reach. That's like, I'm gonna do it. I'm spending all my actions to get up to the monk, and then you like, and you stop them when they're still too far away to attack you.
But not too far away for you to attack them.
Well, of course. You've got 1 inch punch and 1 millimeter punch, which is so powerful that it changes which system it's using to measure distances. And you do like one big punch, and it can potentially, with millimeter punch, like knock them really far away. All sorts of things that give you a lot of different flavor. And some of these are in the core. Some of these are advanced player's guide feats that came in later on. There's a lot of things you can do with the monk, and there's a lot of different paths you can take. You can take feats to make yourself better at getting into the stances, so you don't have to worry about the actions. There's higher level stances, plus the stances each have like some advanced feats that you can take that are for those stances that give you some additional abilities. And then eventually you just get into the realm of super high level, where you go into your key form, where your power level goes over 9,000, or you center yourself with the universe, and use special key stances without paying for them. You can do the Swift River, where every time you have a status penalty to your speed or immobilized or slowed by the end of your turn, you're just like, no, I'm not anymore. You don't even roll a counteract check.
Also talking about Whirling Throw and Exploding Death Drop.
Yeah, there's some really epic visuals that you can have. Whirling Throw, where you just throw the enemy away. Exploding Death Drop, which is another one of those. It's a rare add-on to the rare feat from before from the Pathfinders, but the Pathfinders have it now. Actually, it may be less rare now that the Pathfinders have found it, but it's still not common. Where you lift them into the air and crash them into the ground, which is pretty handy and can potentially deal 12d6 fire damage to them. Mm-hmm. That's fun.
Yeah, it's got the rare prerequisite chain. That's
probably what it is.
Yeah.
Just like how sometimes you have an uncommon, that's right. Like you have an uncommon dedication and then a later feat that's not uncommon because it's like once you already know that you had this, then the other ones are not.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Then some of the 20th level stuff where it's just like, oh yeah, all your attacks are deadly D10. How about that? Or you go into 2 stances and get all of the benefits of them. Impossible Technique, though, may be the most powerful. That's a reaction where it's like, oh, did you get hit or fail a save? But I thought you were a monk. That usually, okay, fine, yeah, reaction, yeah, redo, once per round. Redo. Oh, okay, maybe you did.
I did better, you did worse.
Yep. Also, the fun thing is, you always use the better result, which many rerolls, actually, you have to take the second one, even if it's worse for you, but not with Impossible Technique. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, there's a lot of things going on that you can do when it comes to monks. Tangled Forest Stance. Yeah, Kitsune Warlock. Tangled Forest Stance is what I had in the playtest, and I think that back then it was even more absurd. I mean, it's not necessarily absurd now, but it was absurd then, because what it does for everyone is it's a D8 Agile Finesse also, and I was high enough level to have it. I wanted a D8 Agile Finesse when I was doing the Death playtest. Enemies in your reach that try to move away have to try to make a check or be immobilized. In the playtest, Reflex Save was not one of the 3 options. Right now, it's Reflex Save, Acrobatics check, or Athletics check, their choice. And so, the weird thing was, Logan just didn't know that I had this. He wrote it also, but he didn't know I had it. And he just never tried to move away from me, ever. Even when there were softer targets to attack, he liked beating up on my monk, and that was fine. I was actually fine having all those people stay on me because I was very tanky. But then, the Lich, the one that dominated Jason, I got up next to it, and they do not have acrobatics or athletics in the playtest. I think they may have picked it up because of this or whatever, and then also this gained reflex save. So, the Lich was next to me, and it was like, oh yeah, and I had attack of opportunity because I was fighter multi-class. This was my monk fighter that you've seen in the multi-class chapter. So, Logan's like, okay, yeah, I know you have attack of opportunity. I move away. I was like, well, I have Tangled Forest stats, so you have to roll an acrobatics or athletics check. He's like, I don't have that. I'm untrained. I was like, all right, well, it was the playtest, so you could still roll it at a -4. Mm-hmm. He's like, that's not going to succeed. I said, yeah, well, he's like, who even wrote this thing? I was like, you wrote it? It was hilarious, and the Lich failed, and
then Tangled Forest Stance gained a reflex save.
The real reason it did was that we moved to so that untrained just means you fail, and so nothing in the game could remain with requiring someone to roll a skill check, because otherwise it's unfair to PCs and enemies that just don't have that skill. They just lose. That's also why Maze gained Perception, I think, is one of the options to get out of it instead of being only survival in the playtest, because if you didn't have survival, you're stuck in the maze. Your PC is just stuck in the maze, and that is not fun. So it had to include something that scales when we got rid of the fact that everything scaled. But yeah, so Tangle Forest can be very, very fun.
So there's a lot of versatility in the monk already, but what if you are? What if you're looking to get in on some of those monk abilities? And you're
So
playing character
let's talk
another
about
class?
the multi-class monk. So we've got a multi-class monk here. It's like a Fist of Aurori style. You can see the Aurori on it, on the chest. So multi-class monk is basically amazing. The first feat is not the greatest because you might not need powerful fist class feature that much. But I mean, having a D6 agile finesse weapon that no one can take away from you could be good. But some of the most powerful Uber combos with monk multi-class actually don't need the dedication that much. Because what you can do is grab Monk's Flurry. And then with Monk's Flurry, you can do some things. Like, if you are a barbarian monk with the animal instinct, then you have some obscene unarmed attacks that do way more damage than anybody else's unarmed attacks, and rage to make them do even more damage, so you can flurry with what is essentially a two-handed weapon style balanced damage thing. So that's really handy. If you are a rogue, first of all, if you're in the only play thief meta with rogue, you can get out of that because you're going to be multi-classing into monk. In most cases, unless you're going to go and get monastic weapon training, which then you can keep with the only play thief meta. But you can get out of that because you're not going to get dexterity to damage when you do this. But you can just grab monk dedication so nobody knows you're carrying around a finesse agile weapon to beat them up with that's as strong as a short sword. And then flurry Monk's Flurry and be flurrying with extra sneak attack damage, for example. So there are so many ways that... Now, it does take until 10th level to get Monk's Flurry. So, like, legit, if you're human, consider this for your 9th level feat where you can just throw a multi-class in, and then you can grab Monk's Flurry at 10th. If you don't want any of the other stuff from the basic katas first. Because that's just the right timing for you. You can also pick up Perfection's Path, which flexibly lets you change a saving throw to master, and you're always going to have one if you're not a monk.
And as far as
even if you are a monk, which you can't take this.
And as far as the katas, those have a lot of flexibility too, because it's the flexibility of the monk feat list, which has a lot of abilities tied to mobility and fighting styles that don't necessarily require you to be playing a character of a specific build.
That's right.
So if you have a character that could benefit from unarmed attacks or unarmed fighting in any way, really, then...
Yep. There's also the usual resiliency feat to get more hit points, and there's also just a feat that gives you 10 foot movement speed. It's as a class feat, which can be handy. It's double of fleet, but it is a higher level class feat, so like it's reasonably costed, but it's double
and you need
fleet.
to not be wearing armor as well, because it's fitting in with the armor.
Because you're a monk. Mm-hmm. But one combination that I've seen that's pretty handy is consider doing that thing that I just said with level 9 human feat and then 10 for Monk's Flurry or something on like a bard multi-class. We already talked about how, hey, Inspire Courage everybody's going to be happy with, right? Inspire Courage costs you an action each turn. Flurry of Blows saves you one. So you can still make 2 attacks and do an Inspire Courage. Similarly, we just talked about monk multi-class, but for monks going into multi-class, you might not think it, and the prerequisites are bare. But bard multi-class is like, okay, yeah, I have actions. Why not do a bard thing with my third action? That's a very powerful thing to do. So monks, because of all their action freedom that we've been talking about and the chat's been talking about, they can really look into multi-classes that are very action heavy and be like, yeah, no biggie. I'm a monk. I mean, you give me, if the monsters come up to me, you give me my 1 action for Flurry of Blows, and I'm good. I can do whatever you need. Rex Liquid says monk with bard multi-class is a good sensei character. Absolutely, you can. That's kind of what I was thinking with that. You can theme it as like talking about giving wisdom to people as your inspire. Also, you can legit be like having an animal companion
Yeah.
Right? Go Beastmaster or any of the animal companion choices.
Be a barbarian from that direction. Hop into Rage.
Also, animal companion class can multi-class into monk. And then, you're commanding the companion, and you also do flurry blows, so you still make a ton of attacks, they make a ton of attacks, and it's definitely pretty handy. So, basically Monk is a good, is good in either direction for multi-classing. Silver Knight asks, is there separate non-lethal hit points in 2nd edition? There isn't. There's not. So the attack can be non-lethal or not, and if that attack is the final blow, then you don't go to dying. You just go to being unconscious, and so it's a little less lethal if you do that. So yeah, but Monk also appreciates all sorts of other multi-classes, like you can go Rogue, grab Sneak Attacker, because you're probably using an Agile or Finesse attack. I mean, you're flurrying, why not do a d6 extra?
What about like a Monk Swashbuckler?
A Monk Swashbuckler actually doesn't work great. They both get movement speed, which of course you don't have to take the movement speed feats. But I think from the Swashbuckler side, actually Panache is what you get right away, so the movement speed doesn't combine. The Swashbuckler wants to do a finisher, which by the time you've done a flurry of blows, that finisher is at a very bad accuracy. So they don't synergize quite as well, but that's mostly just because Monk synergizes so well with other things. Also, if you have that, you could potentially do it if you're willing to grab that feat where like finishers have one lower multiple attack penalty than everything else, so that you do like flurry of blows, something to get Panache flurry blows, and then finish with the finisher with only a -6 multiple attack penalty, which is comparable to like a normal person second attack. One worse, but still. So there are ways around it, but that's a very specific character, whereas some of these other ones is like, yeah, whatever, Monk spellcaster. I have plenty of time to cast my 2-action spell and do a flurry of blows if the enemy is there for me. So, and Silver Knight says that the fact that you need to be careful about it makes the non-lethal ability of monks way more useful in 2nd edition than 1st edition. That's true. In 1st edition, you had like it was a weird story of what was happening, because you would like have the barbarian or someone that does a lot of damage take the penalty to like whack someone really hard once with non-lethal at the start of the fight, and then you would throw like caustic acid and disintegration and like negative energy, and
don't worry, they're not gonna die, guys.
It's like, are you sure this disintegration isn't it's like, well, the disintegration might, so maybe we should hold off on that, but we could still throw nitric acid directly into their face, blast them with fire, and like attack their life force with negative energy, and they will not die, unless somehow your hit does more than the barbarian's giant hit and their cushion, because they've got this 45 hit point cushion of non-lethal damage. They're super safe. It's also the reason why 1st edition kineticists who just took a bunch of non-lethal damage and then gained more maximum hit points were very hard to kill when you knock them out compared to other characters, because of the way that worked. In 2nd edition, it's that the knockout blow is a knockout blow, then you don't go to dying. Everything else is weakening them up to that point. So yeah, monk multi-classing is great in every direction. Monks are really solid, and they've got great defenses. The one thing they don't have that a lot of other classes have, we don't want to just be like, monks are the best, they're better than everyone else. Fighters have 2 more accuracy than everyone else, and all of the classes that are not monk pretty much have something that is giving them a lot more damage, or in the case of the ranger, either a lot more damage on 1 attack per round or a huge multiple attack penalty reduction. We'll get into that in the ranger episode. But the monk does not have either of those. It just has such good action economy and defenses that you don't care about that, because you're the monk. And Rex Liquid says, parentheses, monks are the best. So, yeah, there's a lot about monk, but I think that's about it. Kitsune Warlock says, do you think Flurry makes Monk a better Wild Shaper than a Druid? So we should get into the multi-class. Druid multi-classing into Monk, just like Animal Barbarian multi-classing into Monk, for Flurry of Blows is definitely a legit option. I think that Druid Monk multi-class is probably the best, with the exception of the like somewhat cheesy and abusive fighter who grabs at low levels when you're still, because the things from Wild Shape aren't in a weapon group, but at low levels you're expert in everything. The Druid isn't, and you get the status bonus, so you kind of grab higher accuracy than the Druid by a huge amount in the Wild Shapes that have the same Wild Shapes as them. But that falls off pretty quickly. But other than that, I think Druid Monk is better because it gets better shapes as you level up. Starting at 10 when you get Monk's Flurry, obviously when Druid Monk doesn't have Monk's Flurry, then Monk has some advantages because of that Flurry of Blows. All comes down to your action economy versus what's going on with the opponents and which kind of forms you need and when. Because the Druid is always going to have newer form feats available sooner than the Monk does, plus some of those Druid backup feats. Alright, so I think that is about it about the Monk. It's a lot because there's a lot to say about the Monk. So let's say bye to YouTube.
Sounds good.
Bye. See you next time.
Bye.